The void had a way of speaking, if one knew how to listen. Lieutenant Mark Torres had been listening for 3 years now, monitoring the deep space array from his station on Luna. Most days brought nothing but cosmic whispers, the background radiation of a universe in constant conversation with itself. But humans had long ago made a promise. We listen to the void, and when the void calls back, we answer. Torres rubbed his eyes, the holographic displays surrounding his workstation, casting blue shadows across his face. 4 more hours until his shift ended. 4 more hours of watching signals drift across the spectrum analyzer, most of them natural phenomena, stellar winds, and the occasional pulsar. "Lieutenant, your caffeine levels are dropping below optimal," chimed the station AI. "Would you like me to dispense another serving?" "Hit me," Torres replied, sliding his mug under the dispenser built into his console. The machine hummed, filling the cup with the dark brew that kept Luna Station's night shift functioning. He took a long sip, savoring the warmth as it spread through his chest. The signal came without warning, a faint, rhythmic pattern buried within the cosmic noise. Torres nearly spilled his coffee as the array's detection algorithms highlighted the anomaly. "What do we have?" Commander Janet Rodriguez appeared behind him, as if summoned by the alert. She always seemed to materialize whenever something interesting happened on her watch. Signal from Kepler 442 sector," Torres reported, fingers flying across his interface. "Encoded transmission. Earth colonial frequency. It's an SOS, Commander." Rodriguez leaned over his shoulder, her face grim. "Source?" "Kepler 442b, the mining colony." Torres felt his throat tighten. Kepler 442b was classified as a Class 9 death world, a planet so inherently hostile to human life that only the most valuable resources justified establishing a presence there. "Play it," Rodriguez ordered. Torres tapped a command, and a distorted voice filled the monitoring station, breaking up between bursts of static. "This is Kepler 442b colony, under attack, unknown hostiles, breached outer defenses, requesting immediate assistance. Repeating, this is Kepler 442b colony." "How old is this signal?" Rodriguez asked. 18 years, give or take a few months," Torres replied, the delay a reminder of their distance from the colony. 18 light-years out. Rodriguez straightened, her expression hardening into the mask of command Torres had come to recognize. "Send verification protocols, then notify Earth Defense Command. Code Red." Torres nodded, fingers already inputting the commands. Code Red meant a colony in imminent danger. It meant dispatching the nearest defense vessel at maximum burn, regardless of cost or risk. "Do you think they're still alive?" Torres asked quietly as he worked. 18 years was a long time, especially on a world like Kepler 442b. Rodriguez didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the signal analysis, watching the SOS repeat its desperate plea across 18 years of void. "It doesn't matter," she finally said. "An SOS to Earth is never answered lightly." Torres understood. Whether the colonists had survived or not, Earth would respond. It was more than protocol. It was the promise humanity had made when it began reaching for the stars. No one gets left behind. "Message sent," Torres confirmed. "Earth Defense Command acknowledges EDSF Defender is being diverted to Kepler 442b. "Good work, Torres." Rodriguez nodded. "Now we wait." Torres glanced at the data readout for Kepler 442b, a hellish world of 1.8 times Earth's gravity, a toxic atmosphere laden with sulfur compounds, and temperature swings of up to 340 Kelvin between its scorching days and freezing nights. The colonists had built their outpost into the side of a mountain, a bunker connected to a network of mining shafts. Only one thought kept repeating in his mind as he stared at the signal. What kind of threat could be worse than the planet itself? Dave Johnson had never wanted to be a hero. Mining supervisor was already more responsibility than he'd bargained for when he signed the 5-year contract with Exoplanetary Resources Limited. The pay was astronomical, sure, enough to set up his family for life back on Earth. But as he pressed his back against the reinforced door of the colony's main bunker, listening to the alien shrieks outside, he wondered if any amount of money was worth this. "Status report," he shouted, over the din of emergency klaxons and the hiss of the air filtration system working overtime. "Main power holding at 63%, called Henrietta Zhao from her station at the colony's systems console. "Backup generators primed. Outer defense turrets are offline, whatever these things are. They took them out in the first wave." Johnson nodded grimly. "Casualties?" 3 confirmed dead, 8 wounded, 2 critical, reported Dr. Sarah Lynn, not looking up from where she was applying pressure bandages to a security officer's torn abdomen. "We need more medical supplies if this siege continues." 47 souls under his protection: miners, technicians, security personnel, and researchers. Humans, mostly, with a handful of Altarians and Centauri, who had specialized knowledge of mineral extraction. All now trapped in a reinforced bunker on a planet that was trying to kill them even before the unknown hostiles arrived. "What about communications?" Johnson asked, turning to the comms technician, a young Altarian named Zell. "We've been broadcasting an SOS on all Earth colonial frequencies," Zell replied, his translucent skin pulsing with stress patterns. No response yet. The orbital relay was destroyed in the initial attack. Johnson didn't voice what they were all thinking. Even if their message got through, help was 18 light-years away. Whatever was going to happen would be long over before anyone from Earth arrived. "We need to know what we're fighting," Johnson said, pushing away from the door and crossing to the security station where camera feeds showed the devastation outside. "Mira, anything on the sensors?" Mira Chang, head of security, shook her head. "That's the problem. These things barely register when they're attacking. It's like they're phasing in and out of our reality." Johnson leaned over her shoulder, studying the grainy footage. The creatures moved like smoke one moment, solidifying into vaguely humanoid shapes the next. Their attacks seemed coordinated, deliberate, not the behavior of indigenous fauna. "They're intelligent," he murmured. "And they want something. Our minerals." "Most likely," said Kirax, the Centauri geologist. "The dysprosium deposits we've been extracting are rare in this sector." "No," Johnson said, watching the patterns of movement. "They're not going for the mining equipment or storage. They're targeting our life support systems, our defenses. They want us." A heavy silence fell over the command center. "How long can we hold out?" asked Zhao. Johnson did a mental inventory of their supplies. "Food and water for a month. If we ration, ammunition for the defense weapons. Maybe 3 days of sustained fighting." "And how long until help arrives?" Mira asked quietly. Johnson met her gaze. "If our message got through immediately, and if there was a ship nearby, 4 days minimum." No one spoke for a long moment. The odds were not in their favor. "Then we make every bullet count," Johnson said firmly. "And we find a way to hurt these things." He turned to Dr. Lin. "Sarah, you're our xenobiologist. I need you to study the footage. Find a weakness." Lin nodded, already moving to Mira's station. "I'll need samples if possible." "Zhao, Zell, start rerouting power from non-essential systems to the inner defenses. And Kirax." Johnson paused, an idea forming. "The mining gas we use to fracture the deep rock, could it be weaponized?" The Centauri's crystalline eyes glinted. "It's highly corrosive. If these entities have a material form at any point." "Start rigging canisters as traps," Johnson ordered. "Mira, get your security team to set up choke points. We'll funnel them where we want them." As the colony staff dispersed to their tasks, Johnson found himself alone for a moment. He crossed to the environmental display, staring at the hostile world outside their bunker. Toxic clouds swirled across a red-tinged sky, lightning flashing in the distance. Kepler 442b had been trying to kill them since they arrived 3 years ago. Now it had company. Johnson reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against the small, holographic projector he always carried. He didn't activate it. He didn't need to. The image of his wife and daughter was burned into his memory. A promise to return home. "Not today," he whispered to the unseen enemy beyond the bunker walls. "Not while I still breathe." Captain Robert Caney stood on the bridge of the EDSF Defender, hands clasped behind his back as he watched the ship's engineers prepare for the burn. The Defender was the pride of Earth's defense fleet, a Vanguard-class heavy cruiser armed with railguns, fighter squadrons, and a battalion of Marines specially trained for hostile environment operations. "Transit calculations complete, Captain," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Park. 4 days at maximum burn, sir." "Reactor status?" Caney asked. "Operating at 112% of rated capacity," replied Chief Engineer Volkov from her station. "We're pushing her hard, but she'll hold." Caney nodded. The Defender had been on a routine patrol of the Tau Ceti system when the orders came through. Now, they were about to redline a 12 billion credit warship to answer a distress call that was already 18 years old. "Marine Commander Stone reports her troops are ready for drop deployment, sir," announced his XO, Commander Walsh. "They've loaded the Deathworld gear." "Very well," Caney said. "Commence burn." The deck hummed beneath his feet as the Defender's massive fusion drives ignited, pushing the warship to its limits. G-forces increased slightly before the inertial dampeners fully compensated. "Burn initiated," confirmed Park. "ETA to Kepler 442b, 96 hours. Caney's face betrayed no emotion, but his mind was calculating the odds. 4 days to reach a colony that had sent a distress signal 18 years ago. The logical part of his brain told him this was likely a recovery mission, not a rescue. But 26 years in Earth's defense fleet had taught him never to underestimate human tenacity. "Helm, plot sensor sweep patterns for our arrival," he ordered. "I want full tactical assessment the moment we enter the system, and have communications continue broadcasting on all Earth colonial frequencies." "Aye, sir." Caney turned to Walsh. "Commander, join me in the tactical room. We need to review what we know about Kepler 442b." The tactical room was a small chamber adjacent to the bridge, its walls lined with holographic projectors. As Caney and Walsh entered, the lights dimmed, and a detailed representation of the Kepler 442 system materialized around them. "Computer, display all available data on Kepler 442b, with emphasis on the mining colony." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a rust-colored planet with swirling atmospheric patterns. Data points appeared alongside it. Kepler 442b, Class 9 Deathworld. Gravity 1.8 g. Atmosphere, nitrogen, sulfur, dioxide, methane, toxic. Temperature range 190 K, 530 K. Colony, established 2270s. Population 47, last census. Primary operation, dysprosium mining. "Computer, play distress signal," Caney ordered. The fragmented message filled the room, and Caney listened intently, searching for clues in the static-filled gaps. "Unknown hostiles," Walsh quoted when the message ended. "No indigenous sentient life was reported during the planetary survey," which means either the survey missed something, or these hostiles came from elsewhere, Caney reasoned. Lieutenant Torres on Luna Station noted unusual energy signatures in the background of the transmission. Could be weapons fire. "Pirates," Walsh suggested. Caney shook his head. "Too far from shipping lanes. And dysprosium, while valuable, wouldn't justify the fuel expenditure for raiders." He studied the holographic representation of the colony, a bunker complex carved into a mountain ridge, with mining shafts extending deep into the planet's crust. "Defensive capabilities?" he asked. "Minimal," Walsh replied. Standard security measures for environmental hazards and local fauna. Not designed to repel a coordinated attack. Kaney's jaw tightened. 47 civilians with mining tools and light weapons, trapped on a death world under attack by unknown forces. If any had survived, it would be a miracle. We proceed as if they're alive, he stated firmly. Commander Stone will prepare drop teams for immediate deployment upon arrival. Full death world protocols. Sir, if I may... Walsh hesitated. The cost of this operation, fuel expenditure alone, will exceed the colony's entire operational budget. And if we're too late... I'm aware of the economics, Commander, Kaney cut him off. But an SOS to Earth is never answered lightly. Not while I command this ship. Walsh nodded, understanding in his eyes. It wasn't about the cost. It was about the promise. The same promise that had drawn many of them to the service. Humanity stood together against the void. Prepare a briefing for all department heads, Kaney ordered. I want everyone ready for combat operations the moment we arrive. As Walsh left to carry out his orders, Kaney remained in the tactical room, studying the holographic planet. Somewhere on that hostile world, fellow humans might still be fighting for survival, counting the hours, praying for rescue. Hold on, he whispered to the image. We're coming. Day 3 of the siege, and the colony bunker had become a fortress of desperate ingenuity. Dave Johnson moved through the dimly lit corridors, checking makeshift barricades and encouraging the exhausted defenders. The air smelled of ozone, sweat, and the acrid tang of the mining gas they'd repurposed as a weapon. Movement at Sector 4. Mira Chang's voice came through his comm unit. They're probing the ventilation access again. On my way, Johnson replied, grabbing a gas canister from the supply cache as he jogged through the passageway. He found Mira and 2 security officers crouched behind a reinforced position, weapons trained on the sealed vent shaft. A faint, ethereal light pulsed beyond the grating. How many? Johnson asked, kneeling beside them. Sensors show 3, Mira replied. But you know how unreliable the readings are. Johnson nodded grimly. They'd learned through bitter experience that the creatures, whatever they were, existed in a state of semi-corporealness. Conventional weapons were only effective when the entities phased into solid form to attack. Dr. Lin's timing data? He asked. Mira checked her tablet. They should solidify in about 20 seconds for approximately 15 seconds of corporeal state. Johnson set the canister beside the vent. On my mark, open the vent and fall back. I'll trigger the gas. The security officers nodded, taking position on either side of the grating. Johnson could see the tension in their movements, the fatigue etched into their faces. 3 days with minimal sleep, fighting an enemy that defied conventional physics. 10 seconds. Mira counted down, watching the pulsing light intensify. 5, 4, 3, 2, mark. The officers yanked the grating open and scrambled backward. Johnson slammed his hand down on the canister's release valve, sending a cloud of caustic gas billowing into the vent shaft. The reaction was immediate. Unearthly shrieks echoed through the metal passage as the entity solidified directly into the corrosive cloud. Seal it, Johnson shouted, and one of the officers triggered the emergency bulkhead, trapping the creatures and gas inside the section. The inhuman cries gradually faded, leaving an eerie silence. Did we get them? One of the officers asked. For now, Johnson replied, but they're learning. Each wave adapts to our tactics. He helped Mira to her feet, noticing the fresh bandage on her arm where one of the creatures had burned through her environment suit in yesterday's attack. You should be resting, he said quietly. We're all exhausted, she replied with a tired smile. But I'm still standing. Johnson's comm unit crackled. Dave, we need you in the command center, came Dr. Lin's voice. I've found something. On my way, he responded, then turned to Mira. Set up a rotation. I want everyone getting at least 4 hours of sleep per cycle. When Johnson reached the command center, he found Dr. Lin hunched over a workstation, surrounded by holographic images of the creatures captured from security footage. The xenobiologist's usually immaculate appearance had given way to disheveled pragmatism, her lab coat stained with medicinal compounds and the blood of those she'd treated. "What have you got, Sarah?" Johnson asked. Lynn looked up, eyes bright with discovery despite her exhaustion. "I've been analyzing the pattern of their phasing. It's not random. It's cyclic and synchronized." She gestured to the data scrolling beside the images. "See these energy spikes? They all occur simultaneously across different entities. They're coordinating their corporeal phases." "Which means," Johnson prompted. "Which means they're vulnerable all at once," Lynn explained. "And, more importantly, I think I've identified their communication frequency. It's in the extreme ultraviolet range, similar to how some Earth insects use UV patterns invisible to humans." Johnson began to see where she was going. "Can we disrupt it?" "The mining lasers," Lynn nodded. "If we recalibrate them to pulse at the right frequency, we might be able to scramble their coordination, force them to remain corporeal longer, or prevent them from phasing altogether." Hope, a dangerous, fragile thing, flickered in Johnson's chest. "How long to set it up?" "A few hours," Lynn said. "I'll need help from the engineering team." "You've got it," Johnson said, already reaching for his comm unit. "Zhao, I need you and your best engineers in the command center, now." As they waited for the engineers to arrive, Johnson studied the security feeds. The creatures had withdrawn after their failed attempt at the ventilation system, but they would be back. They always came back, in larger numbers and with new tactics. "Any response to our SOS?" he asked Zell, who hadn't left his communication station in nearly 30 hours. The Altarian's skin had taken on a grayish hue, a sign of extreme fatigue in his species. "Nothing definitive. There was a burst of narrowband transmission about 6 hours ago that matched Earth Defense Fleet protocols, but it was too weak to confirm." Johnson placed a hand on Zell's shoulder. "Get some rest. I need you functional." "My species requires less sleep than humans," Zell protested weakly. "That wasn't a suggestion," Johnson said firmly. 4 hours, then you can return." As Zell reluctantly departed, Johnson turned back to the environmental display. External sensors showed a gathering storm, one of Kepler 442b's frequent atmospheric tantrums that would bring acid rain and electrical discharges capable of frying their external systems. "The planet's going to give us trouble too," he noted to Lynn. "We'll need to shut down the external sensors before the storm hits." Lynn nodded absently, already deep in calculations for the mining laser recalibration. Johnson watched her work, marveling at her focus despite the chaos around them. It was that human tenacity, the refusal to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable, that had allowed their species to colonize deathworlds like this one. "Do you think Earth received our message?" Lynn asked suddenly, not looking up from her work. Johnson considered lying, offering the comfort of certainty, but they'd all moved beyond such luxuries. "I don't know," he answered honestly, "but if they did, they'll come." Lynn's hands paused over her calculations. "Even after 18 years? For a small mining colony?" "An SOS to Earth is never answered lightly," Johnson said, repeating the old spacer's adage. "It's what we do. It's who we are." Lynn smiled faintly, returning to her work with renewed determination. Outside, the storm clouds gathered, and somewhere beyond them, the creatures prepared their next assault. But for the first time in 3 days, there was a plan, a chance. Johnson only hoped it would be enough. The Defender dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Kepler 442 system, its sensors immediately sweeping for threats as its massive engines decelerated the warship. "Full sensor sweep," Captain Kane ordered, standing at the center of the bridge. "Tactical display." The main view screen shifted to show the system layout, with the fifth planet, Kepler 442b, highlighted. Almost immediately, alert indicators began flashing near the planet. "Captain, We're detecting 12 unidentified vessels in orbit around Kepler 442b, reported the sensor officer. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures suggest advanced propulsion and weapon systems. Caney's expression remained impassive. Life signs from the colony? Faint readings, sir. Interference from the planet's mineral composition makes it difficult to get an accurate count. But there are survivors. A wave of silent relief passed through the bridge crew. After 4 days at maximum burn, pushing the Defender to its limits, they hadn't arrived too late. Status of the unknown vessels, Caney asked. They appear to be mining, sir, the sensor officer replied, confusion evident in his voice. They're extracting something from the upper atmosphere, and there are energy beams focused on the surface near the colony location. Communications. Hail the lead vessel, Caney ordered. After a moment, the communications officer shook his head. No response, sir. Try again, all frequencies. Captain, interrupted the XO. Marine dropships are ready for deployment. Commander Stone requests permission to launch. Caney raised a hand. Hold. I want to know what we're dealing with first. He turned to tactical. Arm forward railguns, but do not target. Bring us in closer. 1/4 thrust. The Defender moved deeper into the system, its massive bulk accelerating with deceptive grace. As they approached, details of the alien vessels became clearer, sleek, dark ships with organic-looking appendages that extended into Kepler 442b's upper atmosphere. Sir, we're being scanned, the sensor officer reported. Multiple frequencies. Very intrusive. Let them look, Caney replied calmly. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Audio only. Caney nodded. Put it through. A voice filled the bridge, a discordant, multi-tone sound that seemed to come from multiple sources simultaneously. Earth vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Wraith Collective. This is a sanctioned harvesting operation. Withdraw immediately or be neutralized. Caney's jaw tightened. This is Captain Robert Caney of the Earth Defense Ship Defender. You are attacking a sovereign Earth colony. Cease your operations and withdraw your forces immediately. A pause. Then, the bipedal carbon-based entities on the surface are not our primary objective, merely an obstacle to resource acquisition. Their resistance was unexpected, but irrelevant. Our harvesting will continue. Those carbon-based entities are under my protection, Caney replied, his voice hard. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces. After that, we will take action to defend our colony. The transmission cut off without response. Sir, the XO said quietly, we're outnumbered 12-1. I'm aware, Commander. Caney turned to tactical. Target analysis of their vessels. Hull composition appears to be a metallic-organic hybrid, reported the tactical officer. Energy shielding detected, but our railguns should penetrate at close range. They're armed with what appear to be plasma-based weapons. Caney nodded. And the colony? Still under siege, sir. The bunker's main structure remains intact, but sensors show multiple breaches in the outer perimeter. Life signs are concentrated in the central chambers. Caney made his decision. Communications. Send a message to the colony. Let them know we've arrived and help is coming. He turned to his XO. Prepare Marine drop teams for immediate deployment. Full Deathworld gear. Their primary objective is to reach and secure the colonists. And the Wraith ships, sir? Caney's eyes hardened. We'll give them exactly 1 hour as promised. Then we show them what happens when someone attacks Earth citizens. In the colony bunker, the mood had shifted from grim determination to cautious hope. Johnson stood in the command center, reading the message that had come through on the emergency channel minutes earlier. Kepler 442. B Colony. This is Ed's Defender. Message received. Hold position. Marine deployment in progress. Resistance en route. They came, Dr. Lin said softly, standing beside him. After 18 years. An SOS to Earth is never answered lightly, Johnson replied, allowing himself a small smile. The past hours had been the most desperate yet. The creatures, now identified as part of something called the Wraith Collective from intercepted communications, had launched their largest assault just before dawn. Lynn's modified mining lasers had worked, forcing the entities to remain corporeal longer. But ammunition was critically low. Without the defenders' timely arrival, the next attack would likely have been their last. "What's the plan?" asked Mira, who had joined them at the command console. Johnson studied the tactical data transmitted from the defender. "They're deploying Marines in drop pods. ETA 20 minutes. We need to secure a landing zone." "The main mining platform?" Mira suggested. Johnson shook his head. "Too exposed. The acid storm is intensifying." He pointed to a secondary shaft entrance on the eastern ridge. "Here. It's sheltered from the worst of the weather, and we can extend the environmental shield to cover the landing zone." "That area's crawling with Wraith entities," Zell pointed out. "We'd need to clear it first." "Then that's what we'll do," Johnson said firmly. "Mira, get your security team ready. Dr. Lin, we'll need all remaining gas canisters and explosive charges. Zhao, divert power to the eastern shield emitters." As the others moved to carry out his orders, Johnson felt a presence beside him. It was Karax, the Centauri geologist, his crystalline features reflecting the emergency lighting. "You realize," the alien said quietly, "that this defense force has come for the humans. My kind and the Altarians. We are not their priority." Johnson met Kirax's gaze steadily. "You're part of this colony. We stand together, or not at all." "Many species would not make such a claim," Kirax observed. "Then many species are fools," Johnson replied. "Now help me rig these explosives. We've got a landing zone to secure." 20 minutes later, Johnson crouched behind a reinforced barrier at the edge of the eastern mining platform, watching the storm-racked sky. Beside him, Mira and 4 security officers aimed their weapons at the perimeter, where the ghostly forms of Wraith entities drifted among the mining equipment. "Lynn, status on the shield?" Johnson asked into his comm. "Expanding now," came her reply. 70% coverage of the landing zone. It's the best we can do with the remaining power." "It'll have to be enough," Johnson said. "Everyone ready?" Affirmatives came through the comm from each team position. They had one chance to clear the landing zone before the marine drop pods entered the atmosphere. "On my mark," Johnson said, finger hovering over the detonator. 3, 2, 1, mark. He pressed the trigger, and a series of explosions rippled across the outer perimeter. Mining gas canisters burst in carefully calculated positions, creating a corrosive cloud that caught several Wraith entities in their corporeal phase. Their unearthly screams cut through the howling wind as security teams opened fire, targeting the now vulnerable creatures. "Second wave, deploy," Johnson ordered, and Lynn's team activated the modified mining lasers, forcing more entities into corporeal form. The battle was chaotic and desperate. Johnson fired his own weapon until the power cell depleted, then switched to a mining torch, its superheated flame cutting through a Wraith entity that had phased too close. Across the platform, he saw Mira take down 3 creatures in rapid succession, her movements precise despite days of exhaustion. "Johnson!" Kirax called over the comm. "Above!" Johnson looked up to see the distinctive contrails of drop pods cutting through Kepler 442b's toxic atmosphere. Earth Marines making their combat descent into hell. "Cover the landing zone!" he shouted, rallying his tired forces for one final push. The first pod slammed into the platform with bone-jarring force, its heat shields glowing from atmospheric entry. The hatch blew outward, and armored figures emerged, Earth Marines in Deathworld combat gear, weapons already tracking targets. "Colony personnel, identify," shouted the lead Marine, her voice amplified through her helmet. "Dave Johnson, mining supervisor," Johnson called back, ducking as a Wraith energy discharge sizzled overhead. We've got 42 survivors in the main bunker. Commander Stone, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Unit, the Marine replied, her heavy Gauss rifle thundering as she took down a Wraith entity. Captain Kane sends his regards. More pods landed, disgorging squads of Marines who moved with practiced precision, establishing a perimeter around the landing zone. Their weapons, designed for the harshest combat environments in the galaxy, tore through the Wraith entities with devastating effectiveness. "Fall back to the bunker," Stone ordered. "We'll cover your retreat." Johnson signaled his team, and they began pulling back toward the bunker entrance, Marine fire providing cover. As he reached the doorway, Johnson turned to see the magnificent sight of Earth's finest warriors, holding the line against both the planet's fury and the alien threat. Inside the bunker, Dr. Lin was already treating the wounded, her medical bay now reinforced with supplies from the Marines' drop pods. Oxygen tanks, medicine, and fresh power cells were being distributed throughout the colony. "The Defender?" Johnson asked Stone when the Marine commander joined them inside. "Engaging the Wraith fleet in orbit," Stone replied, removing her helmet to reveal a scarred face with determined eyes. Captain Kane gave them an hour to withdraw. They declined. Johnson nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. 1 Earth warship against 12 alien vessels. Odds? Stone's expression remained professional, but a hint of pride showed through. "The Defender is a Vanguard-class heavy cruiser with the best crew in the fleet. I wouldn't bet against Captain Kane." As if in response to her words, the bunker trembled slightly, and they heard the distant rumble of what could only be orbital weapons fire. "That," Stone said with grim satisfaction, "would be our railguns." The battle in orbit had begun with a single shot. A 200-ton tungsten rod accelerated to a fraction of light speed by the Defender's forward railgun. It struck the lead Wraith vessel amidships, the kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear detonation, tearing through alien shields and hull alike. The ship didn't explode so much as disintegrate, scattering into a debris field that forced the remaining Wraith vessels to adjust their formation. "Direct hit," reported the tactical officer. "Target destroyed." "Target lock on vessels 2 and 3, Caney ordered calmly. "Fire when ready." The Defender shuddered as its main weapons fired again, the massive electromagnets along its spine propelling more tungsten rods toward the Wraith fleet. "Enemy vessels are returning fire," Tactical announced. "Plasma weapons, approaching from bearing 045. "Evasive maneuvers," Caney commanded. "Bring us about to heading 180, present minimum profile. Launch Fighter Squadron Alpha." The massive warship pivoted with surprising agility, its point defense systems activating as plasma bolts streaked toward it. Most were intercepted, but one struck the port armor, causing damage indicators to flash on the tactical display. "Port armor integrity at 87%, reported engineering, compensating with additional power to shields." From the Defender's launch bays, a squadron of 12 Raptor-class fighters emerged, their fusion drives flaring as they accelerated toward the Wraith fleet. "Alpha Squadron, you are weapons-free," Caney ordered. "Target their propulsion systems." "Copy that, Defender," came the reply from the squadron leader. "We'll give them something to think about." On the main view screen, Caney watched as his fighters executed an attack pattern that would have been suicidal for less skilled pilots, diving between enemy vessels, delivering precision strikes against engines and weapon emplacements before breaking away at speeds that strained their inertial dampeners. "Sir, Wraith vessels are repositioning," Tactical reported. "They appear to be forming a defensive sphere." "They're protecting something," Caney observed. "Sensors. Deep scan of the center of their formation." After a moment, the sensor officer looked up in surprise. "Sir, there's a 13th vessel at the center, much larger than the others. Possible command ship." Caney's eyes narrowed. "That's our target. Communications. Patch me through to Alpha Leader." "Channel open, sir." "Alpha Leader, this is Caney. We've identified a command vessel at the center of their formation. I need you to create an opening for our main guns." "Understood, Captain. One hole in their defenses. Coming up. The fighters adjusted their attack pattern, concentrating fire on 3 vessels on the near side of the Wraith formation. The alien ships returned fire furiously, but the Earth pilots were executing maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Using Kepler 442b's gravity, willed a slingshot around at velocities that made targeting nearly impossible. Forward railguns. Prepare for synchronized volley, Caney ordered. Target the command vessel the moment we have line of sight. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, years of training evident in their coordinated actions. As the defender maneuvered for a clear shot, another plasma bolt struck the ship, this one penetrating the weakened port shields. Damage to decks 12 through 14, reported engineering. Emergency teams responding. Caney acknowledged the report without taking his eyes off the tactical display. The fighters had succeeded in creating a momentary gap in the Wraith formation, revealing the massive command ship within. Target locked, Tactical announced. Fire all forward batteries, Caney ordered. The Defender unleashed its full arsenal, railguns, missile batteries, and energy weapons converging on the Wraith command vessel. The alien ship's shields flared brilliantly as they attempted to absorb the onslaught, then collapsed under the strain. The tungsten rods penetrated deep into its hull, followed by a barrage of missiles that detonated inside the breach. The effect was catastrophic. The command vessel didn't simply break apart, it seemed to implode, a chain reaction consuming it from within. As it disintegrated, the remaining Wraith ship's coordinated defense faltered. The remaining vessels are breaking formation, Tactical reported. They appear to be retreating. Pursue and continue firing, Caney ordered. I want them out of the system. The Defender accelerated after the fleeing Wraith ships, its weapons systematically targeting engines and propulsion systems. 2 more alien vessels succumbed to the barrage before the rest managed to reach sufficient distance for FTL jumps. Enemy vessels have departed the system, sir, Tactical confirmed. Long-range sensors show no immediate signs of return. Caney allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. Casualties? 17 wounded, no fatalities, reported the XO. The armor did its job. Status of Marine deployment? Commander Stone reports the landing zone secure and contact established with the colony. 42 survivors confirmed, including non-human personnel. 42 out of 47. Not perfect, but far better than they had dared hope after 18 years. Set course for standard orbit of Kepler 442b, Caney ordered, and send a message to Luna Station. Colony secured. Rescue operation successful. As the Defender moved into orbit around the Deathworld, Caney allowed himself a moment of reflection. An 18-year-old distress call, a 4-day burn at maximum capacity, and a battle against unknown aliens, all to save 42 lives on a remote mining colony. The accountants back on Earth would calculate the cost in credits, fuel, and resources. But some things couldn't be measured in such terms. Some principles were beyond price. An SOS to Earth is never answered lightly, he murmured to himself, watching as the planet turned below them, its hostile beauty a reminder of humanity's determination to face the void on its own terms. The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency. Earth Marines secured the colony perimeter, while medical teams treated the wounded, and engineers salvaged what equipment could be transported. Johnson found himself standing in what remained of the main mining platform, watching as the last of his people boarded the shuttle that would take them to the Defender. "You're not coming?" asked Dr. Lin, pausing at the shuttle hatch. Johnson shook his head. "Not yet. Captain Kane wants a full assessment of the remaining infrastructure. Some of us will stay a few more days." Lin studied his face, understanding what he wasn't saying. "You're going to rebuild. The dysprosium deposits are still here," Johnson replied with a small shrug. "The company will want to resume operations eventually." After all this, Lin gestured to the devastation around them. Mining equipment twisted by Wraith attacks. Tunnels collapsed from the fighting. "It's what we do," Johnson said simply. We push back the darkness. We carve out places for humanity, even in worlds that don't want us. Lynn smiled, the expression transforming her exhausted face. I'll request reassignment to the rebuilding team. It won't be comfortable, Johnson warned. We lost most of the environmental systems. Comfort is overrated, Lynn replied. Besides, someone needs to keep you alive. She reached out, briefly squeezing his arm before boarding the shuttle. As the craft lifted off, Johnson felt rather than heard someone approach. Commander Stone stepped up beside him, her armor still bearing the scars of battle. Your people fought well, she said, her gaze following the departing shuttle. Captain Kane says he's never seen civilians hold out so long against such odds. We had motivation, Johnson replied, and we never stopped believing help would come. Stone nodded, understanding the unspoken bond that tied together all who ventured into the void. The mining company sent a message. They're calculating the cost of rebuilding versus abandoning the operation. Johnson snorted. Bureaucrats. Captain Caney added his recommendation. Stone continued, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. He suggested that the strategic value of maintaining a human presence in this sector outweighed the economic considerations. Did he now? Johnson raised an eyebrow. The Defender will remain in orbit for 2 weeks while initial rebuilding assessments are completed, Stone said. After that, a permanent defense platform will be established. Johnson looked out over the hellish landscape of Kepler 442b, the acid storms, the toxic atmosphere, the punishing gravity, a death world by any measure, but also a home for those willing to face its challenges. We'll be ready, he said. Later. As the day cycle ended, and Kepler 442b's brief, violent sunset painted the clouds in shades of crimson and gold, Johnson stood on the observation platform with Captain Kane. The two men, so different in their roles, yet united in purpose, watched as the first stars became visible in the darkening sky. 18 years, Johnson said quietly. Most people would have written us off. Most people don't understand what it means to be human, Caney replied. We don't abandon our own. Not to pirates, not to aliens, not even to Deathworlds. The Wraith? Johnson asked. We've sent warning to all Earth colonies and the Galactic Council, Caney said. They won't catch anyone by surprise again. Johnson nodded, feeling the weight of the past days, the fear, the losses, the desperate hope, finally beginning to lift. Thank you for coming. Caney didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice carried the simple truth that had guided humanity's expansion among the stars. An SOS to Earth is never answered lightly. Below them, engineers were already beginning to clear debris from the mining tunnels. Marines and colonists worked side by side, preparing for the next phase of humanity's presence on this unforgiving world. Life would continue here, despite everything the void had thrown against it. Because that, too, was what it meant to be human, to endure, to rebuild, to answer the call, no matter how distant or desperate. In the command center of Luna Station, Lieutenant Torres and Commander Rodriguez received the message from the Defender with quiet satisfaction. The system had worked. The promise had been kept. And somewhere, 18 light-years from Earth, 42 souls continued to push back the darkness, knowing they were not alone against the void.